Well, good afternoon, everybody. Just really pleased to be able to send you this short video from my office rather than my home. Finally, we're back to work again. I think like quite a few of us now, even though the encouragement is obviously to stay at home, but I couldn't stay at home any longer, I'm sorry. So the office beckoned and here I am. So what I wanted to do today was just give you a bit of an update as to where we're at. It's been a while since I've communicated to you. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to do a little bit of analysis and a little bit of sort of theorizing about what we think is going to be happening moving forward. As usual, I'll start with a little bit of a screen share for you guys, which is here. And yeah, what I wanted to quickly just start with was the actual virus itself. So this particular chart shows us effectively two different measures of the growth, a percentage increase in cases and then a 5-day rolling average. It pretty much tells the same story though. And the story is that right through up until sort of, 2/3 of the way through March, this virus was very aggressive and grew quite dramatically. And sort of shortly before then, the lockdowns had started and the containment process was begun. And that containment process that the Australian government implemented and then was subsequently implemented by the states led to quite an unbelievable result, really, as we saw. The idea was to flatten the curve. What's actually happened here is we've more or less eradicated the curve. So what we've seen is this dramatic improvement in the number of new cases being reported. And that's given some optimism to our markets, and on the basis of the fact that where we thought this might be something that would be completely uncontrolled, it's now looking to be something that can be controlled. And of course, markets really don't like that uncertainty around what can and can't be controlled. Now, if we expand that out and have a look at how that's playing itself out in the world market, we're seeing a different sort of position, but a similar kind of trend. And that is that, again, looking at the number of worldwide cases, we had this kind of ramping up, if you like, or growth in number of cases. And now we've moved into this phase, which is also flattening that curve. Now, certainly some governments around the world are imposing some of these kind of lockdowns that we've endured here in Australia. But what we're seeing is that in Italy, the United States, France, across these developed countries, we've seen the virus get completely out of control and then be wound back to a point where we're starting to see this kind of leveling off. So let's just carry that through to markets. And this is a chart we've looked at before, which is the performance of the Australian share market over the past 3 months. And again, we've been through this. We saw this quite significant decline, which was the result of the financial impact of the coronavirus. And since then, we've seen the market kind of move in this direction in a fairly kind of flat sort of curve. So when we look at market corrections, we tend to put them into the shape of a letter. So just to give you an example, there was a feeling that this correction may be a V-shaped recovery. So that means that we go all the way down here and then we bounce back quite strongly in the shape of a V. Now, what we're seeing at the moment in this particular correction is that that's not the case. So we're not moving towards a V-shaped recovery. The next type that we analyze is a U-shaped recovery, where the markets go down, flatten out for a period of time, and then come back up again in the shape of a U, a longer kind of cycle, if you like. And that is possibly where we're headed, in the idea of this trundling along here for a while and then making a recovery as the economy opens up, as we all start going back to work. But there's also the possibility this becomes an L-shaped kind of correction. So we go down and we stay down for a long time. So that's the part of this that we don't really know. It doesn't look like it's going to be a W-shaped recovery where it goes up in a V and then down, then back up again. So we're looking at either a U-shaped recovery or an L-shaped recovery. Now, if we compare that to what the experience is in the United States, What we're seeing in the US is actually more of a V-shaped recovery. Again, we saw this growth, then we saw the fall with coronavirus, and now we've seen the pickup on the other side. So much so that the US market is only down 7%, which is pretty good performance based on what we saw happening during the month of March. Now, if we look at that in its context, comparing markets, this chart shows us the purple being the extent of the market fall and the red being where we are now. So if you look at Australia, our fall fell down to sort of just on 35% correction. And now we've pulled back the best part of around about 10% of that fall. But if you compare that over here to the US, where their correction was less than ours, and they've recovered harder. So we need to sort of look at the question as to why is it that the US economy or the US share market and to a lesser degree the economy is probably performing a bit better than the Australian market. And there's probably there's two main reasons for this. The first reason is the actual impact of the coronavirus in the US. Yes, there are hundreds of thousands of people dying, unfortunately, but they tend to be people who are older. So people over the age of 65 make up by far the greater proportion of total deaths. Excuse me. So what the markets are factoring in is that, well, yes, people are dying, but they're not contributors to the economy. They're people who are too old to be contributing to the economy. Furthermore, they are people that were costing the economy money, and there are now going to be less of them. So that sort of takes you down a path to suggest that the markets are factoring in this kind of thing. The second reason, I think, is when you do a bit of analysis of interest rate movements. If you look here at the American interest rate experience, and I'm going to compare that to the Australian, what you can see is back here, back in the early 2000s, we saw a bit of a bull rush, and we saw bull market, and we saw interest rate rises all the way up to sort of 5.5%. And then the global financial crisis hit, and of course, interest rates were savagely cut back down to about zero, where they stayed for quite a while through 2016. And you might remember the Fed started increasing interest rates, much to the president's discontent, because he didn't want to see interest rates rising. But the Fed was trying to slow down the economy as it was ending a boom period. And then, of course, the COVID-19 hit us and interest rates fell dramatically. So you've had these two quite substantial increasing periods. Now, if you look at the Australian interest rate experience since 2008, our interest rates have only fallen. So it's meant that that when we got to these very low rates, when we came to COVID-19, there wasn't a lot of room for the Reserve Bank to move to actually stimulate the economy. So they're just the two differences between these two hills and this sort of gradual decline that we've seen here. So look, that's really all I wanted to touch on today. It's interesting that we're going to be looking at this recovery and working out what shape that letter is going to be, whether we're going to be, moving through into a U shape, or whether it's going to extend out and become a bit of an L shape, which will be a problem. But we're sort of seeing that the economy is getting onto its feet quicker than many probably expected. And that was because of the uncertainty when we were in the midst of the virus. Nobody really knew whether or not this could be controlled. So now that it's been proven that there are control measures, and those control measures work, it now means that the economy can move forward with some confidence that certainly wasn't there 3 or 4 weeks ago. Look, I'm going to keep you updated with my videos. Obviously, you can access these via Facebook, via Instagram, via our website. Anything that you need from us, please feel free to give us a call, and we'll just continue throwing these things out there and giving you a little bit of analysis, a little bit of understanding of how things are starting to improve. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon, and take care. Stay healthy.